how do we
Yeah.
do real time?
Yeah. How do they do it?
Well, that's what I'm going to.
Oh, you're going to explain that here on this
That's
thing?
going to blow through.
All right.
At least my theory on it.
Yeah. I'm glad you have a theory.
Yeah.
Hi, Dalton.
Oh, hey, Jamie. How's it going?
Going well, thanks. So this episode is going to be focused around analysis.
Yep.
And analysts.
Yep.
Right.
The crime analysis and how this all fits in.
Good. That's good work. So let's start with crime analysis.
Yeah.
Right. Let's start with crime analyst. Let's start with analyst. Just analyst.
In general, I like it.
So what I've seen around our great country is the word analyst used to describe everything from someone who actually does analysis to someone who operates cameras.
Yep. It's used in both situations.
So why?
But I think probably because they just don't really know how it fits in. Because this is one of the questions that I get asked a lot whenever I go into crime centers, not from the chiefs or the command or even middle management level, but from the operators themselves. Especially if it's a new center, it's like, how do I be an analyst in a real-time crime center? And because I think what a lot of people are doing, backing up here a little bit, is they're putting crime analysts in that position, which I'm not going to say if it's good, bad, or indifferent.
Sure.
I would actually be really curious to ask the crime analysts, and if we have a commenting on this, I would really like to then engage in the comments to tell us what their thoughts are on this, because I think you would agree that the crime analysis profession is pretty important. What they do,
for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, historically, they have been the provider of, at minimum, annual department reporting statistics to give data, right? To analyze the data of the department. Now, so that people don't kill me on this thing, records managers, records supervisors also provide annual data, right?
Yeah.
And do that, and they do it very well. But crime analysts traditionally are used in an investigative sense, right? For the most part, if they're assigned to within an agency. But yeah, they perform, up to this point, a very important job for a department, right?
So, and before we really get into this, I want to make the statement on the record that I am not a crime analysis expert.
That's for sure.
Yeah. So,
just wanted to put that out. I was just trying to agree with you.
So anyway, I'm not a crime analysis expert. So like, if there are any analysts listening to this, like, forgive me if I get things wrong. I'm doing this from the perspective of a former officer that was in a real-time crime center, liaised and worked with our crime analysts, saw what they did, saw how our department, treated their information, and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
So if I get things wrong, forgive me. But this is just from my perspective.
Okay.
But I remember having a conversation with one of our crime analysts one time because she was in a situation where she was confused about what people were doing with her information. And I'm guessing this is probably something a lot of analysts see,
there. Yeah.
because they're like, I do all this and then I never see a result from it.
That's right.
Which is a failing of our profession. It's not a failing of the crime analysis, the crime analyst. Yeah. It's a failure of the department recognizing how they need to fit in with that, right?
Yeah.
And she said something to me, and I still remember it to this day. She said, I said, what do you want to do? Like, tell me what your ideal version is. She said, it doesn't really matter. I just want what I do to matter.
Okay. It's fair, right?
Yeah.
That's kind of foundationally, that's what most people want in their career. And if you take crime analysts, so we brought in a crime analyst into our real-time center. It's actually much different than that. We had a crime analyst homestead in our dispatch, in our real-time information center, right? And voluntarily, and we appreciated having that crime analyst there. And ultimately, I learned pretty quickly exactly what you just said. I didn't know much about crime analysis, right? Yeah. And much about that process and what they do. But it also developed my motto I stick to today: let the experts be the experts.
Right.
right? We have experts for a reason, and we need to let them do that. But yeah, everybody wants to be valued, and they want their work product to be valued. Now, granted, just because you provide a product of work doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to warrant action every time, right? And that's just life, right? So, well, maybe you know this, maybe you don't. Why do agencies bring crime analysts? And let's throw every analyst in there. Let's throw crime and intelligence analysts, because their agencies around our country seem to have one or the other, or a combo of both. So for the purposes of this, we'll just call everybody analysts, but we're kind of inferring that it's all of them. Why do you think agencies are putting their analysts into their newly designed real-time policing, either centers or their unit?
So in my opinion, it's because they have long lacked an understanding of how they should be effectively utilized. You know, from my perspective, at least in my city and a couple of others I've seen, they use them as map makers. Go make me a map and tell me where the crime is, and then they talk about it once a week at CompStat or in a meeting or something like that, and that's about it.
Yeah.
Right? I would argue what they probably should be doing is, let's take all this information, let's figure out who's doing the most crimes. Now let's hand it to somebody that's actually going to act on it. This goes back to what I was talking about in the previous episodes when we talked about, the process of analysis, which is, you got to ingest the information, you got to analyze it, you got to disseminate it, you got to act upon it. And I think we both agree it breaks down.
Yeah.
Right?
Sure.
It breaks down. So I think historically these chiefs and these higher level command staff, they don't understand the crime analysis profession like they should. And they're always rotating in and out, which is a problem.
Yeah.
So their assumption is, I'm not getting a lot of value from my analysts, when in actuality it's their fault.
Yeah.
So they say, I'm just going to take this historical position that in my eyes provides little to no value, which is incorrect again.
Right.
And put them in the real-time crime center where they will provide value.
Yeah. Or at least you hope they do, or you think they will, right?
Yeah.
I think what you say is accurate, right? Throughout agencies, throughout our country. What I find puzzling when it comes to crime analysts, and this is something I had to learn pretty quickly as well, is a lot of what they generate, man, you don't see agencies acting on that, right? Or you see what looks like discounting what they're producing.
At least not at the patrol level.
Yeah.
That's especially where it gets, because I'm too busy. I'm not going to open that email. I'm not going to act upon that.
I've got other things to do. Right?
Yeah, I've got other things to do. The specialized units are a little bit different, because I was on both sides of that, and we did pay attention to our crime analysts.
Yeah. For those that aren't aware, crime analysts that take pride in their job, no different than anybody else with any other job, right? You take pride in your job. Our crime analysts are very up to date on current processes of analysis, right? Current trends, which is part of their job, right? Identify trends, patterns, et cetera. And so having them in a real-time policing unit really enhances that unit if that is a good employee, which we can talk over and over about. You need to put the right people in, right? So let's assume that these agencies are putting the right crime analysts into these real-time policing units. How have you seen that better the real-time policing strategy in agencies?
Yeah. So I think what people need to realize, and what we need to, as a crime analysis, as a profession, is that there is something new, something different with the real-time crime center and putting a traditional analyst in that role. Agree?
Yeah.
So, and I think that's probably where the disconnect is you're plugging these people into that role and saying, okay, go be a real-time crime center. And they're used to their forms of crime analysis, which are totally different than real-time. And I think it's time that somebody identified a new type of analyst, a real-time analyst, right? I think a lot of people would say, well, that's just a tactical analyst, but I see it as a little bit different, slightly different. Because the tactical analyst is, they're analyzing information, but in my opinion, everything that I've read on that, they're not doing it in the moment. Maybe they should be.
Yeah, right.
But the real-time analyst to me is completely different. It's in the moment.
Yeah.
And so this is kind of where I lean into with when people say, how do I do this?
Yeah.
And there's a couple of things that I've come up with because, I watched my people, I watched other centers, and I've kind of determined, like, as a rule of thumb, this is kind of what they do. So there's 4 different things. First and foremost, I think the proactive engagement is what I call the first one. Okay. So what is proactive engagement?
What is that?
Yeah. So that's essentially a real-time analyst is doing something in a crime center without an external trigger, meaning there's no call for service. There's no police officer calling them, asking them to do something. So they're in a room and they're proactively doing something. I used to call this proactive enforcement.
Yeah.
But then I came off that term because there's a lot of things that you could do proactively that are not enforcement related, right? Like, you have some examples of that?
Yeah, I mean, it's for sure in a real-time space, proactive engagement is searching case histories of crimes that occurred overnight to start to determine patterns today, as opposed to waiting for those cases to be processed by detectives, right? So you're literally searching for these potential patterns, trends.
Yeah. So one of the things that we did one time, and maybe this doesn't work because it's really an external trigger when a tornado is coming through your city, but it's not criminal related. You're not enforcing the tornado.
Yeah.
But we actually had a tornado on camera and we're watching it and we're giving real-time information out to the field, and that's a safety thing, right? Like, this is where the tornado is right now.
Yeah.
But I think in general, depending on the crime in that city, you should be spending about 5% of your time doing proactive stuff, like watching cameras, monitoring open air drug markets, which big cities have a problem with. A lot of little cities don't, but we had an issue with that.
Right.
So we watched a lot of cameras to basically find something for an officer to do. And we would see somebody dealing drugs. We would see them carrying around a gun or something like that. We would call somebody to respond to that.
So some of the listeners on this podcast are going to hear what you just said and think to themselves or say to somebody else that they're talking to about it, my analysts are not going to be watching cameras.
Yeah.
How do you feel about that? Should they be? Should they not be? Is that agency specific? Like, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think it's 100% agency specific, because if you don't have the things to watch and be proactive about, such as, massive loitering in parks where there's lots of crime, gun violence, things of that nature that a lot of bigger cities see, there's really no reason for you to be proactive, which is why I say about 5% of the time.
All right. So it goes back
it
to
could be up or down.
No cookie cutter.
No cookie cutter. Right? But in general, I think about 5% should be proactive engagement. So the second way that I think a real-time analyst should be effectively doing their job is what I call real-time situational awareness. This is really the meat of what a real-time crime center should be doing. Okay. And I think I put about 60% of the time should be spent on this. All right. Now, garden variety.
Yeah.
Call comes out, real-time analyst goes into action and says, I've got this person on camera that this call is about. So basically there's an external trigger, meaning a call for service, or an officer has called me or something like that, and you're reacting to them calling you.
Okay.
And your job there is to improve safety. You're trying to help them identify somebody. You're trying to do something that leads to an apprehension of a criminal suspect.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
We did this a lot.
Yeah.
Because, really, a real-time crime center should be focused on patrol.
So this is the dig.
Yeah.
Right?
Hit me with it.
We're digging here.
We're digging.
If you come from the dispatch world, right, many of our great dispatchers are diggers.
Okay.
And so as soon as that call for service happens, they're starting to dig because they want to find that associative information. Yeah. Right. So is this what you're saying?
Yeah, they want to provide information in the moment.
Okay.
They're seeing something, they're giving the information. So like flying a drone overhead on a call for service would be that's real-time situational awareness. We're trying to give the information out to the patrol officers 60% of the time.
Okay.
I think that's pretty much what a crime center should be doing most of the time.
Yeah.
So if you're not doing that, you should be.
Okay.
Okay. So third one, this is the really interesting one. This is probably my favorite. This was certainly the most multitasking, intensive, difficult task that any analyst would do, any officer would do. And this is what I call it proactive reviewing.
Okay.
Joe Shipp in Fort Worth, I wish I would have come up with this term. He calls it getting to zero, which is such a fantastic term because that's exactly
Joe Shipp.
Yeah, Joe, good phrase. I think about 30% of a real-time crime center's job should be doing proactive reviewing. And here's what it is. Crime just occurred.
Yeah.
Okay. And the goal is to catch up to where that person is right now. Okay. So here's an example. Several years ago, we were in the crime center and a shooting call came out. We see it, it hits the screen, call gets dispatched, we immediately jump on it, and we say, we got cameras over there. So we pull the cameras up in that area. And what happened, we saw some guys run up to a fence line, automatic weapons, start shooting into a playground. Okay. Now, wasn't like a bunch of kids out there.
Yeah.
There were some other guys. I don't know if it was a rival gang or what, but there were guys in the playground area.
Yeah.
One of them got shot.
Yeah.
So we saw that. So we know.
As it was happening.
Well, not as it was happening. This was after the fact. So the call had already been dispatched. The call had already happened.
Yep.
So we're reacting to it.
Okay.
So it's not real time. We're reacting to it.
Sure.
You with me so far?
Yep.
So we look at the time and we realized we're about 4 or 5 minutes behind. Okay. Our goal at that point, in that moment, is to get to zero.
Okay.
All right. So what do? Watch them leave, saw the car they were in, didn't have a license plate, didn't have any license plate reading cameras over there. But what we could do is we could start following this car camera to camera across the city. And the goal is to catch up to it.
Yep.
We want to get there. We want to get it to zero so we can turn that effectively into a real-time situational awareness. We're in real time.
Yeah.
So saw the next camera at the next intersection, check the time. Now we're 4 minutes and 50 seconds behind. Jumped ahead a couple of miles.
Yeah.
Fast forward really fast. Now we're 2 minutes behind.
Yeah.
We're catching up to the vehicle.
Yeah.
Right?
So how can AI assist in that, right? So you think human-wise, right? Imagine all of the steps you have to go through to get to zero.
Yeah.
How fast can we get to zero with AI enhancements?
This is the future.
On that, right?
What you're talking about is the future, either through a camera or a drone, to be able to go into a camera that AI or a machine or something already knows.
That's right.
And says, I know exactly where all my cameras are.
Yeah.
I know exactly how far away they are from each other.
Right.
And say, that car.
Yep.
Tell me where that car is right now. And then whatever happens in the machine world analyzes
magic.
that. The magic. The magic that I don't
clearly.
understand.
It's not engineering.
Yeah, engineers are like just shaking their head.
Right, it's
Oh my
magic,
gosh.
for
Put
sure.
Somebody smarter on the podcast.
Yeah.
But the goal is to catch up to it.
Yeah.
Now, in that situation I was telling you about, we actually got within 30 seconds of that car. So we saw it go into an apartment complex after the fact. Yeah, no, it's awesome.
Yeah.
All the way across town, went into an apartment complex. So we were able to tell the homicide sergeant, walk him through, and it just blew his mind.
Yeah.
He's like, and he told me afterwards, he's like, you absolutely blew my mind when you said you got within 30 seconds of that car, because he had never really thought about it like that before.
And important for our audience to know that, can we get to zero without real-time policing? Sure. But it might take you a lot longer, right? In that sense, right? Because there's probably people that will listen to this and think, I can go back to the office and review video, and I can do that. The point being, can you do it more efficiently as an agency, right? And so now, if you start to real-time police, you can incorporate that with your analysts and actually start to get to zero much quicker. Trademark Joe Shipp.
Good job.
I like that. Joe, write a book now.
The reason why, taking a step back on a hiring overview, the reason why I think getting to zero is so important is because the odds of getting the evidence are no higher than in that moment. If you wait 2 days to find that car, the evidence is gone. There's no shell casings in the car. There's no evidence in the car. There's no stolen property in the car. They've already taken it out.
Right.
So in order to make the best case possible, you want to apprehend that person as fast as you possibly can, which is why this is so dramatically important.
Yeah.
So
No, it's good.
yeah, so 30% of the time, I think that's what most analysts, because the crimes are going to happen all over the place.
Yeah.
Big city, small town, you're going to need to be able to do
No,
that.
it makes sense.
Yeah, and then the last one is this reactive reviewing. And this is essentially, I'm just reviewing video after the fact. There's no chance I'm going to find this person in the moment. just trying to help out a detective.
Okay.
About 5% of the time.
Yeah.
Okay.
Critically important, though.
Very important.
Right? I mean, that's I like to look at reactive reviewing, as you describe or define what it is just now, as your analyst in a real-time center finding potential evidentiary video on cases that were taken. And imagine you're the detective sergeant over property crimes, and you see, okay, we've got 30 cases that came in overnight, and now imagine you have some notification from your real-time analyst that says, hey, on 2 of those, there's potential evidentiary video, right? Now it helps you assign those cases. You might assign, it might jump priority, right? So now, you're affecting the efficiency of the entire department, right?
Yeah. Well, the cheat code for this is LPRs.
Sure.
Fixed license plate readers.
Yeah.
Because that would allow you, theoretically, to get to 0, even on an old case. So let's say 5 hours goes by,
right,
or a whole day. Let's just do 24 hours. And you've got a license plate on a car that you've determined, and now you put it into your hot list.
Yeah.
And it scans 5 minutes later. You're at 0.
Yeah.
Right? You just caught up from 24 hours. You're at 0. That you know where that car is right now.
We have it now. And now you incorporate live cameras into that and you get them right.
Exactly. Now you're following. So now you're in a real-time situational awareness scenario, and you're telling officers what to do and where to go.
Yeah.
Let's get this person in custody. They committed a crime.
Yeah, that's good. Let's go to the solve story.
Yeah,
let's check that out, and then we'll come back and talk about that.
Yeah.
Welcome to today's Solve Story. So imagine a city that not only has LPR, but has technology and officers that are eager to use it. That's Blue Springs Police Department. So after suspects shot and killed 2 people, Blue Springs PD used city-owned cameras to review traffic footage. By doing that, they were able to spot that suspect vehicle on recorded video going through an intersection. Now, this gave them a really good description of the car, but, and this is where most investigations end, they didn't know the license plate on the vehicle. So they saw the description, they couldn't tell a plate. A sergeant comes into Flock, knowing that Flock used vehicle fingerprint technology, which is going to allow us to search without a license plate, and starts doing a search based on that suspect vehicle, the color, the shape, the stickers, etc. By doing that, he identifies the plate related to that suspect, and 2 days later, when it hits on a custom alert through Flock Safety, another sergeant was able to quickly find it in the area. That suspect was located at a car wash, detained safely, and taken into custody. That's all from me. Back to my cohorts, Jamie and Dalton.
Great solve story.
Yeah.
Great work.
Yeah.
How does this fit into what we've been talking about? So, first set of cameras that came into play there were the live cameras.
Right.
So they know that there's evidentiary value out there with the cameras, and they want to find that car in the moment, right? Found the license plate on it and
got to work. Right. Yeah. It's and again, I love seeing these solve stories because when you see them written, what I go to, my mind jumps to every time is how many more dozens of that same solve story exist.
Oh, hundreds.
Right. That we just don't see written. That happens every day, and it goes back to another episode where if you talk about your wins and you go that direction, it's great. So getting back to this solve story, with a double homicide vehicle, what would we use in your 4-step process for analysis, right? Yeah. Are we using the proactive reviewing at that point? Is that where we're at, getting to 0?
Yeah, it depends on how much time passed, but it seems like they got to 0 when they got the hit 2 days later.
Yeah.
I mean, you need to stop that car. You need to find out who's in that car, and that's what they did. So they went straight from reactive reviewing after the fact. I don't know where this car is. It's been 2 days.
Right.
Boom, we get an LPR hit
Here it
on
is.
that car. Here it is.
Yeah.
Let's jump right into real-time situational awareness.
Right.
Let's tell officers where to go, what to do, the details of the case. I mean, they don't even theoretically have to know about that incident.
Yeah, right.
If the crime center knows about it, because they can say, you just got an LPR hit.
Yeah. I'm going to interrupt you on this. So this fascinates me. You sometimes see agencies enter local hot lists with very little information on the case, on the car, et cetera, right? This is a great example of why that's probably the worst thing you can ever do. So if you enter the requisite amount of information that helps Officer Smith, who might have been off duty when this shooting happened, may not even know the shooting happened, right, depending on where we're at, all they see is wanted as part of a homicide or potential investigative lead, right?
It's really funny to hear you say this because we literally put paragraphs on our hot list.
Yeah.
Literally. I mean, we would spell it out.
Yeah.
This car was used in a shoplifting incident where a white male with a beard and a purple shirt was doing this. And it happened on this date at this time.
Yeah.
Now, the reason why we put date and time on there was because if it just happened in the moment, we want officers to know it just happened in the moment.
Yeah.
Because as everybody out there knows, the totality of circumstances, the reason for stopping that vehicle,
That's right.
you can do it if it just happened. If it's 5 days later, you're going to need to find probable cause.
So for just a word of advice to executive staff everywhere, have a procedure, not just for LPR usage, have a procedure for hot list entries. Right? Don't just say we're going to limit it to employee X and Y. If that's what you want to do, fine. But employee X and Y, when they enter something, should follow the procedure that is prescribed throughout the department. And there really shouldn't be any exigent circumstances that prohibits them from doing that. It should contain enough information as prescribed by the department, right?
Yeah. So, you know what's funny is when I wrote our policy years ago for LPR, I got pushback on it because I intentionally didn't say in order to enter a hot list, you have to have probable cause. And it was for this reason.
Yeah.
If you put it in the moment, like that's essentially going back to the digital broadcast.
Yeah, right.
We don't know for a fact what has happened here.
Yeah.
But there's enough reason to detain this vehicle if a dispatcher sees the call, sees the plate, it's on the radio, calls out, and then an officer just happens to be behind them. We don't know the circumstances of the call.
Yeah.
But that officer is completely justified in stopping that vehicle to investigate.
That's right. And again, it goes back to that. Do you have that justification?
Yeah.
And if all you enter is vehicle may be associated with a double homicide, half our audience would say, yeah, it gives me the justification.
Yeah.
The other half would say, I need to know a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I would definitely want to know.
And so that's where, just a word to the wise, right? Make a procedure and just make sure everybody follows that. It's going to make life a lot easier.
Yeah, I agree. And to add on to that, hot list in the moment.
Yeah.
That is such an integral part of real-time analysis, real-time policing. Put those hot lists in on those active calls.
Yeah.
Put the time and the date so officers know if that scans 30 seconds later or a minute later, they know it's an active call. It could theoretically be on a completely different side of town. It could theoretically be in another city.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
If it crosses a boundary and a neighboring agency has no idea what's going on, but they get a call or a hit on their LPR list that says this car was just used in a stabbing 3 minutes ago in this city. They don't know the call exists.
Right. And most cities don't have enough LPR placement to where they have both the ingress and the egress of their cities covered. So they don't necessarily know that car left their city. So being able to see it in another jurisdiction is something else. What are we talking about next time?